For years, Japan has been known as a powerhouse in women's wrestling. But recently, their men's team shocked the world by winning the Olympics. How did this happen? Japan's success in wrestling didn't come out of nowhere. It has deep roots in the country's sports culture. Wrestling in Japan has existed for centuries in some form, with traditional styles like sumo dating back over 1,000 years. But modern wrestling, the kind we see in the Olympics today, started gaining traction in the early 20th century. Japan first competed in wrestling at the 1932 Olympics in Los Angeles, but their real breakthrough came in the 1950s and 60s. After World War II, Japan made a concerted effort to develop their sports programs, and wrestling was one of them. The biggest moment came in 1964, when the Olympics were held in Tokyo. Japan used this as motivation to prove itself on the global stage, and one wrestler stood above the rest, Yujiro Uetake. Uetake was an absolute phenomenon. He trained in both Japan and the United States, wrestling at Oklahoma State University, where he went undefeated in his college career. He carried that dominance to the Olympics, winning gold in 1964 and again in 1968. His combination of technical precision and relentless pace became the blueprint for future Japanese wrestlers. During this era, Japan built a reputation for being highly disciplined, methodical, and technical on the mat. But while they produced legends like Uetake and later Olympic champions, their men's team never became dominant. Unlike the Soviet Union and the United States, Japan didn't have a steady stream of world champions year after year. Their style was effective, but it wasn't enough to consistently overpower the giants of the sport. Meanwhile, their women's team was beginning to take shape. By the 1980s and 90s, Japan became a leader in women's wrestling, long before it was even included in the Olympics. This early investment paid off in a big way when women's wrestling debuted at the 2004 Olympics, and Japan immediately took over. But for the men, success was more sporadic. They had elite wrestlers, but never a wave of champions at the same time. That's what made their recent rise so surprising. Something changed. And suddenly, Japan's men weren't just winning medals, they were winning everything. While Japan's men's team has had its share of struggles, one thing has never been in doubt. Japan's women's wrestling has always been the best in the world. But why? To understand Japan's dominance in women's wrestling, we have to go back to the 1980s. At that time, women's wrestling was barely recognized as a serious sport in most countries, but in Japan, it was growing rapidly. The country's technical, fast-paced style of wrestling translated well to the women's division, and by the time women's wrestling was introduced to the World Championships in 1987, Japan was already miles ahead of the competition. Then came the legends. Saori Yoshida and Kaori Icho weren't just dominant, they were nearly unbeatable. Yoshida won 13 world titles and went undefeated for 16 years. It wasn't just about a few stars, it was about a system. Japan's wrestling culture encouraged discipline, precision, and relentless technical drilling. Their training methods focused on speed, fluid transitions, and strategic efficiency, making their wrestlers nearly impossible to score on. Other countries were still trying to build their women's wrestling programs, but Japan already had an assembly line of champions. Fast forward to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, and that dominance was still on full display. While Yoshida and Icho had retired, a new generation had taken over, none more impressive than Yui Susaki. At just 22 years old, Susaki put on one of the most dominant performances in Olympic history. Competing in the 50 kilograms weight class, she didn't give up a single point on her way to gold. She crushed every opponent, showcasing the same relentless style that had made Japan's women so unstoppable for decades. But Susaki wasn't just a product of Japan's system. She was proof that their dominance wasn't slowing down. She had been a phenom since high school, winning everything at the junior level before seamlessly transitioning to the senior circuit. Her performance in Tokyo wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Japan's women's wrestling wasn't just dominant in the past, it was dominant now, and it was going to stay that way. But while Japan's women continued to reign supreme, something strange was happening. For the first time in history, their men's team was starting to look just as dominant. The same system that had created generational talents like Yoshida, Icho, and Susaki was now producing world-class men's wrestlers. And in 2020, that shift became undeniable. While Japan's women's wrestling team has long been a dominant force, the men's team had often remained in the shadows, until recently. The 2020 Tokyo Olympics marked a turning point, showcasing a remarkable resurgence in Japan's men's wrestling program. In men's freestyle wrestling, Takuto Otoguro emerged as a standout athlete. Competing in the 65 kilograms weight class, Otoguro displayed exceptional skill and determination. He advanced through the rounds with impressive victories, culminating in a thrilling final where he secured the gold medal for Japan. This achievement not only highlighted Otoguro's personal talent, but also signified Japan's growing prominence in men's freestyle wrestling. In men's Greco-Roman wrestling, Kenichiro Fumita delivered a commendable performance in the 60 kilograms category. Fumita advanced to the final match, demonstrating technical prowess and resilience. Although he fell short in the gold medal match, earning a silver medal, his performance underscored Japan's competitive presence in Greco-Roman wrestling on the world stage. Overall, Japan's wrestling team concluded the Tokyo 2020 Olympics with a total of 5 gold medals and 7 medals across all categories, leading the medal count in wrestling. This success reflects a significant shift in Japan's wrestling landscape, with the men's team stepping up to complement the long-standing excellence of the women's program. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It resulted from strategic investments in coaching, the establishment of state-of-the-art training facilities, and a cultural shift that encouraged more young men to pursue wrestling. The Japanese Wrestling Federation implemented programs aimed at identifying and nurturing talent from a young age, mirroring the successful strategies employed in women's wrestling. Moreover, exposure to international competitions became a priority. By competing against and learning from the world's best, Japanese male wrestlers gained invaluable experience, adapting their techniques and strategies to meet global standards. This blend of traditional Japanese discipline and modern training methodologies has been pivotal in elevating the performance of Japan's men's wrestling team. Japan's wrestling resurgence didn't stop with the Tokyo Olympics. If anything, that was just the beginning. The country's men's team carried that momentum into the 2024 Paris Olympics, proving that their recent success wasn't a fluke. It was a sign of a new era in Japanese wrestling. At Paris 2024, Japan's wrestlers once again made their mark. While their women's team continued its tradition of dominance, the men's team showed that they weren't just here to compete. They were here to win. One of the biggest names leading this charge was Daichi Takatani. Known for his explosive style and relentless pace, Takatani emerged as one of Japan's most consistent performers, taking on the world's best and establishing himself as a true contender. But perhaps the biggest star to emerge from Japan's new generation is Masanosuke Ono. If you follow international wrestling, you've definitely heard this name by now. Ono has quickly become one of the most talked about wrestlers in the sport, and for good reason. In just a short time, he's taken down some of the biggest names in American wrestling. First, he shocked fans by defeating world champion Vito Aruhao, proving that Japan's style could match up against the best in the NCAA system. Then, he made an even bigger statement by beating Spencer Lee, one of the most dominant collegiate wrestlers in U.S. history. These wins were proof that Japan's men's wrestling had officially arrived, and now, all eyes are on the 2025 World Championships. Japan has always been a force at Worlds, especially in the women's division, but this time, the men's team has serious contenders in multiple weight classes. With stars like Takatani, Ono, and a rising wave of young talent, Japan is no longer just a powerhouse in women's wrestling. It's becoming a powerhouse in wrestling, period. So, what changed? How did Japan go from a country known mainly for its technical precision to producing wrestlers who can dominate on the world stage? The answer lies in their training methods, their evolving style, and a cultural shift that has pushed their wrestlers to be more aggressive, more physical, and more relentless than ever before. And that's exactly what we'll break down next. Japanese wrestlers are known for their discipline, technical precision, and relentless pace. But what sets them apart isn't just what they do, it's how they do it. Their training methods, heavily influenced by Japan's martial arts culture, focus on 3 key areas: technique, endurance, and mental toughness. Japanese wrestlers are drilled to perfection. Their style is built on clean, efficient technique. No wasted movement, no unnecessary risk. Coaches emphasize fluid transitions, crisp execution, and mastering fundamental positions before adding complexity. One reason for this precision is Japan's connection to judo and sumo. Many wrestlers have backgrounds in both sports, developing elite balance, footwork, and hand-fighting skills before stepping onto a freestyle or Greco-Roman mat. Takedowns aren't just about power. They're about timing, leverage, and execution. This is why Japan produces some of the smoothest wrestlers in the world. Their practices are fast-paced, high-intensity, and non-stop. Wrestlers perform hundreds of repetitions of takedowns and scrambles with minimal rest, forcing them to develop muscle memory under extreme fatigue. One example is suriashi, a traditional sumo footwork drill. Wrestlers practice sliding their feet across the mat in a low stance, reinforcing stability and movement without losing balance. This drill, along with koshiwari, helps develop leg strength and flexibility, giving Japanese wrestlers an edge in scrambling and defending takedowns. Physical ability is only part of the equation. Japan places a huge emphasis on mental discipline and composure under pressure. Wrestlers train to remain calm in high-stress situations, a skill rooted in Japan's martial arts philosophy. From a young age, wrestlers are taught to focus on self-improvement rather than just winning. This mindset, influenced by Judo's founder Jigoro Kano, helps them stay composed during tough matches. Visualization exercises are also a key part of training, where athletes mentally rehearse matches to prepare for every scenario. This combination of technical drilling, relentless conditioning, and mental preparation creates a machine-like level of consistency. Japanese wrestlers rarely make mistakes, and when they do, they recover instantly. Japan's wrestling system isn't just about producing one or two stars, it's about sustained dominance. Their training academies focus on developing talent from an early age, emphasizing fundamental technique over brute strength. This long-term approach is why Japan's women's team has stayed at the top for decades and why their men's team is now catching up. By the time wrestlers like Masanosuke Ono and Daichi Takatani reach the international level, they've already gone through years of intense drilling, mental preparation, and competition experience. The result? A new wave of Japanese wrestlers who are faster, sharper, and more disciplined than ever before. Japan's rise in wrestling wasn't an accident, it was a process built on precision, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. They've always been good, but now they're unstoppable. And as their new generation continues to rise, one thing is clear: Japan isn't just here to compete. They're here to dominate.